It's a pleasure being here. Can you see me behind this podium? It's a pleasure, and I want to say thank you to the organizers of this event. I think this is a wonderful event. Um, this evening, we will be looking at data centers. And of course, I'm sure you all know, or especially many of you will know that we cannot talk about interconnect without really talking about data center. Data center is the hub where all interconnect happens. And so we want to look at, this evening we want to look at data centers. We want to look at where we are today. We want to look at what has been, the past historical trend, how we get to where we are. We want to look at what do we need to do. We want to look at financing. We want to look at investments in Africa. We want to look at personnel. We want to look at capacity development and so many other things. My work today is very easy. I was just telling them there that I don't need to do anything. I'll ask the question. I will just listen and take note as well. I have people you can call data center themselves, or people you can call oracles of data center across Africa here. And I'm very, very happy to welcome the panelists. To start, I will call Dr. Ayotunde Koka. He's the MD CEO of OADC, Open Access Data Center. So you're welcome, Dr. Ayotunde. I'm sure this is a name that everybody knows, and just his presence, I don't know if I'm going to be able to ask him too many questions as I want to have. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Also, I'll be calling on another veteran of the industry. His name is Lars Johannisson. Lars Johannisson. Sorry, Lars. Lars is the CEO of Rack Center. And if you are in the data center industry, I'm sure you all know Rack Center. So Lars is the CEO of Rack Center. Lars, you're welcome. Also, I'll be calling the next person. Of course, this is not in any order, so we just have to call one person before the other. So I'll be calling Mr. Wole Abu. Mr. Wole Abu is a veteran in the industry. You all know him very well. He's the MD CEO of Equinix West Africa. I don't want to talk about too much about him. He's a salesman. He's everything that you want to talk about in the digital space in Africa. There's only one lady amongst us this evening, and I will be calling her. She is the MD of Ifogora Advisory, a global business unit of Ifogora Global Capital. Her name is Nkiru Chime. Nkiru, you are welcome. Nkiru will be handling a lot of the structure of finance and how financing infrastructure like data center and digital infrastructure in Africa can be achieved in the most efficient and cost-effective way. Thank you, Nkiru. You're welcome. Also, last but not the least, of course, is also a veteran, Dr. Krish Ranganath. Is the CTO of African DC. Dr. Krish, you're welcome. We run by each other everywhere we go. We always see each other. And it's like, oh, you are here too. I'm here too. All right? Thank you very much, Dr. Krish. So I'll take a seat. And the structure of this is we will go through the panel. At some point, we'll have one or two questions. At some point, we'll have one or two questions, from the audience, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you very much. Good evening. Right. Good evening, gentlemen and lady. It's a pleasure seeing you all again, and I am privileged to be the host on this panel. It's going to be a very interesting one. I know we are all pressed for time, but we will not be kind to this audience if we don't do justice to all the things that we have to do, because I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this panel. So first, before we round up, I want to give we cannot be talking about interconnect or pairing if we don't talk about we don't talk about data center, like I said. And there are about 57 interconnect or exchange points in about 48 cities in 36 African countries today. And this play host to the cross connection of how our digital information flows between data center to data center, from city to cities, and from the African continent to the rest of the world, right? A lot of people don't know, when you send your packets, when you send your WhatsApp message to somebody in the US and in Europe and all that, people don't know how those things are done. So they are done through this pairing and interconnect traffic exchanges between data centers and networks. I want us to start this way, and I'll be starting with Mr. Lars Johannisson. As the hub of interconnect and pairing, how has the data center evolved? If you look at in Nigeria, for instance, it started from like switch room, from telco, and sometimes early in 2012, 2013, thereabout, there is the tier 3 data centers were coming up, and then to where we are today, and to the future of AI and all the things that we're talking about. What can you say has been the evolution of data centers? Let's take the background from that first.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Gbenga, and thanks to the audience for being here. I think if I would phrase it and summarize, I would say professionalism, Gbenga. As an anecdote, I came myself to Nigeria 2012 due to a client of mine that at that time had a data center. What they perceived with data center essentially was sinking in water, and that what brought me to Nigeria, and data center what retains me in Nigeria today. So I think, summarize it, professionalism. Before, as you correctly said, anyone and everyone could have a data center as long as it was located somewhere, you had some kind of resilience. We left that way behind us. Some people might say it took too long or not, but the fact is today what I see among the whole industry, my peers and this audience, is professionalism. There is, an expectation which is comparable here in Nigeria to any other location, which I think is a giant step. So that is number one, professionalism for the third time. When I look at evolutions also, the way that we treat our clients, the customer experience, the uptime is basically not a thing that we strive for, it's a given, and that's something we need to provide to our customers. The last part is probably the change in demand, the requirements on us, a data center provider, is also going up, which is a good thing. And I think many times it's thanks to our client base. They are becoming more and more knowledgeable. They are demanding more, and they're doing the right thing for the right reason, and that puts us also in a place where we constantly need to evolve. Now, this evolution is not always easy, because we need to understand how you plan and build for it, but for the fourth time, I think among the industry, it's been a tremendous evolution in professionalism, and that I see every single day. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lars. And I look back, sometimes I remember for some of you that's been when we used to have PTO rooms where we cross-connect copper, in Nitel exchange and all that then, and then looking at where we are today. So talking about evolution, Wole, what do you think? So now, there's been a lot of investment now in data center. We have Visa in Johannesburg, we have ADC, Gulf Data Hub, and N+1 in Morocco. Now, even Equinix came to Nigeria. There is digital reality coming to Nigeria, and everybody is trying to build all these megawatts and all that. What do you think is really driving this investment, especially in Africa?
Thank you. I think it's three big buckets that are driving the adoption and growth of data centers in Africa. First, there's the global. You remember that technology is not limited to by geography here. So it makes good money. That's the first thing. From an investment, from an asset class perspective, it's the top performing sector. The S&P 100, the top 10, 8 of them are tech companies, and they make up 40% of the value. First, the last time something like that happened was just before the dot-com, but they didn't have money. Now, these are real revenue-generating giants, paying better than everybody. The earnings per share is higher. So they are real companies making real money, so it's not like a bubble. So first, it makes good money. Then there's the demand side. AI is everywhere, in everything, all at once. And this is just the model training side. We're going to see the inferencing uptake, hockey stick uptake, maybe in 2027. So people are saying that to see that, there's an exponential growth coming. There's user-generated content everywhere. 2 years ago, if you asked ChatGPT how far, it will be telling you about distance. Today, if you say how far, it will speak pidgin back to you. So, it's getting there. So people are beginning to see. Then the third, I would say, is the regulatory environment. It's getting a bit more predictable and more supportive. Around Africa, you're seeing a lot more supportive policies. You have special economic zones, you have tax incentives, you have even power, the Presidential Power Initiative, for example, in Nigeria to harden power infrastructure is there. So with predictability in the environment, people are getting a little bit more comfortable investing here. So there are better returns. There are lots of people who are generating content and using it. Nigeria is almost content development headquarters in Africa here. And you're beginning to see it around the key hubs, South Africa, Kenya, even in North Africa. Just to round up, Morocco, for example, invested almost $19 billion in energy. And energy and digital economy are twins. They go together. If you have any digital device, you need connectivity and you need power. So with improving power is also helping to the uptake on the demand side. And with better policies and better capital, you're beginning to see the investments flowing. And it's going to continue for a while.
Thank you very much, Wole. I like that aspect of, you touched on so many points, but I want to remind Dr. Cook, we've been here together, right? And I remember that I was talking to somebody, one of my Ghana colleagues, that the Ghana ecosystem is still not very open. And it's simply because the reason why I want to talk about regulations and the impact of, regulation, how the capacity of regulation to open up, the ecosystem. I remember sometimes in 2012, 13, I think it was the CBN mandating the banks, you remember, to go into tier 3 data center is actually what really brought about, how, we have. So regulation is extremely very, very important. I agree with you. Thank you very much, Wole. Dr. Cook, I'm coming back to you. So in my introductory I mentioned about 57 IXPs, we have in Africa today in about 48 cities in 36 countries across Africa. We've talked about how IXPs, maybe you can even start from there, how IXPs in data center can enable, connectivity in terms of cross connection, bringing the cost of interconnect very low, the cost of internet low, improving the speed and efficiency and all that. Do we say, or can we say that we have enough? We say 57. Do we have enough? What should we be doing?
It's a whole chain of things. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a great honor to be here. Thank you very much. As a whole cycle of things that happen. One, we need more data centers. The analysis has been done. And ADCA, you could say, well, 700 or what, probably around about 3 megawatts of power each and so on. So Africa is underserved by data centers. And it's well known, just to reiterate on it, that we only have about 1% of installed data center capacity of the world. We are creeping towards 18% of global population. That's rising. But the amount of data centers we have in power terms is not rising as fast as it should. We have 4% of global GDP. So I call that 4% to 18%, the prosperity gap, right? But that 4% of GDP is not rising fast enough as the population is. So we need to raise that quicker. Now the 1% of data centers, we need to move it even quicker, but we won't close that prosperity gap unless we close the digital gap, which is the difference between the 4% and 1%, right? So that's one side of it. Now, even with what we have right now, we need to have more IXs, okay, because it drives digital efficiency. And the analogy I usually give is this. Imagine if you send a letter, I want to send a letter to you, my neighbor, but the post office exchange is in London. So you have to put this letter on a plane, fly it to London. It gets looked at in London, and the guy in London says, oh crap, I don't have the information. Why don't we try California? So you put on the plane, it goes to California, comes back, oh yeah, the reference of this thing is back next door, and it comes back to you. Hugely expensive. So if we don't have the efficient digital ecosystems, we won't close that digital gap. So we need more IXs. And I think, for instance, for efficiency, I mean, Mohammed Rodman said yesterday, gave an example when he said he got latency efficiencies down to, I mean, it's a huge number, right? It's a fraction just by optimizing the IX. Multiple IXs in the country also help to get efficient information down to the eyeballs. So we need more IXs and more effectively planned across the continent. But it's not a surprise that you find the areas of the highest natural content, Joburg, Lagos, pushing ahead. But even despite that, I mean, IXPN has an IX in most data centers in just Lagos and going across the country. We need to see that more in other countries. And it's excellent when you see, I think, Obina was talking about Niger, first IX over there. We need, especially the countries, what I call the middle spine of Africa, not on the coast. We need to get more connectivity over there, and we need to get more IXs into that middle spine. The other thing is this, the enabling technologies, over time, carrier neutrality, okay? Neutral environments are essential. They drive the connectivity ecosystems. You get the natural interconnect pairing. And metrics like the number of carriers, the number of ISPs you have, the number of cross-connects you have, are the things that play to what Wole was talking about, the valuations of the business. It's the very, very important valuation drivers. And that's why you can get valuation levels for real high interconnect, vibrant ecosystem data centers with many, even multiple IXs, right? Obafemi, Microsoft was talking about the choices on how you would elect to pair, and you want to have levels of efficiency in terms of, and not the IXs you have. So having multiple IXs in a data center is even more as important, right? Now, what you find and the impact you can make on countries, we opened the first live data center in Kinshasa, OADC. It's transformed the digital ecosystem. So it's most of the networks are now in that ecosystem. The IXs, multiple IXs there being brought into a neutral ecosystem. what we're finding isn't just driving the local dynamics. We're now seeing international players now thinking, oh, I want to be in there to pair. It's a city of 16 million people. That starts to even grow the digital ecosystem in that place. So having all of that together is a very sort of virtuous cycle of growth. I was just reflecting now. I mean, I'm trying to remember when Michelle McCann, I mean, what Terraco's done on the whole thing around pairing, NAP Africa, the growth of it. I mean, is it 5 terabits or something like that now, and so on. It's been really quite remarkable. And it made me go back to around about 2015. I think it was 2015. She did a presentation about the journey on, I think it's still on the AfPIF website. If you go and try, she might tell it about the growth of the company around about that and the tipping point of the ecosystem. I look back for it to be around about 2014, right? That was a very important tipping point of how things were developing in South Africa and grew around to the rest of Africa. I think the rest is history. If you look at the growth of companies like Terraco now.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you say in 1 or 2 sentences how ready are we for AI, for instance? I mean, you talked about, how many and the importance of having them, but are these cross connects today? Are these inter-exchange points or IXPs? Are we ready for the AI traffic?
It's all part of the mix. And the reason I say that is this. A few years ago, people would say AI has been around in different forms. We've just been pushing the limits of technology, availability of the information, the advent of scale data centers, big ecosystems, IXs, high performance chips, GPUs has just taken it to another level, right? And the demand, and the reason we have very high dense racks is even the latency of cross-connecting compute from one rack to another is too high for the kind of AI compute. So you have these high densities, right? And so, are we ready? I think the kind of quality of data centers that we're building now in Africa are increasingly ready, right, for AI processing. What part of AI processing? Typically, it was the what I call the back end of AI, okay? LLMs and stuff like that, huge crunching learning models and so on. But increasingly, we're seeing the architecture that means that you need the sovereign AI, the starting evolution of sovereign AI. You need to get, agentic AI is a key aspect of reaching out the consumption of AI capability. More of that is what I believe will be coming to Africa, right? And because the eyeballs will consume the content, AI-related content that we're starting to see coming in now. That will demand low latency. Imagine interacting with an agent that has high latency. It's just going to be a horrible experience. Imagine if you're engaging with something that's actually life-changing in terms of consumption, and it's just a horrible experience because it takes time. The ecosystems we're putting in place with the hyperscaler size, for the term we use, I guess, having data centers that are flexible in execution around liquid cooling, and air cooling, a hybrid, and so on, that we're now starting to say, well, AI ready, what's going to prepare us? But we don't have enough of them. Well, South Africa, we've got some coming up in Nigeria now, we've got Kenya, we've got others that are scaled but not quite. But we're starting to see those kind of data centers support that kind of requirement for AI.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Dr. Krish, I'm coming to you. And so we've talked about, data center, we've talked about interconnect, and I'm looking at co-location service providers, for instance, the likes of ADC, the likes of, Rack Center, WIOC, and, OADC, not WIOC, OADC, and MDXI, for instance. How can these operators help content providers
cloud platform to localize traffic. This is what I mean. If you have co-location now, some of these hyperscalers, they do what they call availability zone, within a particular area. So we expect that when they are in OADC, they also possibly be in MDXI and all that. And within themselves, they have like 3 different localized whatever. And they have other, they can, an Equinix Meta, for instance, can cross-connect with, without even taking those traffic out of the whatever. How can this be done? How can, operators, service providers, co-location service provider enable this connection such that it becomes faster, it becomes cheaper for people to be able to, cross-connect and be able to exchange traffic within the country rather than having the expensive route out of the country?
Good evening, all. Thanks, Gbenga. As you rightly pointed out, when the hyperscalers have multiple availability zones, correct, the same can be replicated here locally. But what it entails is the enablement and handshakes, rather partnerships, correct? A lot of local cloud players are coming up, both national as well as regional, correct? So how we can enable them, that is what we need to look at, correct? Number one is that it is in line with the various data protection laws across Africa. That is number one. Number two, of course, there are a lot of other discussions are going on data privacy, data classifications. So majority of those aspects supports, the local cloud and the local hosting. And as far as majority of the data centers are concerned, they offer vanilla colocation to an extent. So this becomes an add-on to support their own internal business as well as the external ecosystem. Rightly mentioned by you, the traffic still stays local, okay, which really takes care of a lot of aspects. One is latency. Critical applications can run local. So indirectly it is running on a LAN. So your latency becomes less than 20 milliseconds. So which enables number one. Number two is that your cost of the internet bandwidth comes down because we are still running on the local network. And again, the critical point, security. The cyber security aspect of it can be taken care better of in a local network. And again, if it is local, of course, everybody expects to be paid in the local currency, which is one of the things we in Africa need to look at that, because majority of the currencies are getting devaluated. And there's a huge difference between the central bank rates of currency as well as in the open market. So let's look at realistically, correct? So if you are taking a funding in dollar, okay, so we are converting that into local currency, how are you going to repay it? So a lot of factors getting involved into this. So we need to really enable the local ecosystem, and not only on the cloud aspect of it, but surrounding everything, so that the local economy, the African economy improves much better. Of course, it will take a bit of time, but we need to go into that direction. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. I like that part. Data domiciliation, encourage a lot of this. And if we encourage this, and if we enable and encourage this local peering and cross-connect, we'll keep a lot of the traffic. We can deliver this traffic packets, more efficiently. So, which translates to a lot of good user experience, and then of course we keep the money. Now, Nkiru, I'm coming to you. So we're talking about these hyperscalers, and Dr. Krish is talking about AWS and all that. And my question is, you are familiar with structure of finance and all that, in Africa. What do you think are the specific drivers? What drives these hyperscalers when they are coming to Nigeria? Some people will argue regulation, and we've looked at impact of regulation, and I'm not going to take that off the table as one of the key enablers of investment, right? Some people will say eyeball, some people will say, oh, Africa, we have so many people, and guess what? Sometimes I've been to some supermarkets outside Nigeria before, and I saw a very big mall, and then very few people are shopping. Not like what we have in the Keja Mall shop right there. You have a lot of people. So sometimes, when you talk about purchasing power, you can actually see that, okay, so these very few people are buying so many things, and all that stuff. So, but again, when it comes to data, everybody wants to recharge and, want to send WhatsApp. What are the key drivers? What is driving AWS, Meta? They are laying cables to Nigeria, Equinix, and all that stuff. What exactly are the key drivers from finance standpoint?
Okay, thank you so much. I think that's a very good question. And like Wole said, everybody wants to come where the money is. And we know that data is the next big thing. So it's basically the demand in Africa, which is ever rising. As we know, Africa has about 18% of the world population. We don't really have enough infrastructure in terms of the digital infrastructure to support the demand for data. There is increased demand from digitization. E-commerce is on the rise. We see fintech surge. We see all of those things all demanding data. We also have a very young population in Africa. And the young population, people they are data hungry. You see a lot of streaming, gaming, and also content creation and all of that. All of those things demand data, and all of those things mean that there is the traffic or the eyeballs or, that demand surge in Africa. Another thing you would also understand is that the internet penetration currently is still very low in Africa, which still makes Africa a very viable place to invest. Internet penetration is about 40% compared to about 70% you have in other places, so the market is there. So in all of these things, the need for the hyperscalers to locate closer to the users in order to improve latency, improve the user experience, and also bring down the cost is critical. We also see regulation from the angle of data sovereignty, and that's one thing that is going to be a game changer, because currently, I think most of the African countries are a little bit slow on that because we don't really have the infrastructure. But the time is coming where that data sovereignty will be enforced and everybody would even be forced to. And that is not the best time for them to start coming in. Now is the time to, gain that early mover advantage to be able to, perform. Most importantly is that bringing the data closer home improves the user experience. Most of the hyperscalers, Meta and all of those, they use cache, as a way of bridging that latency, but that is not sustainable in the long run. So there is a need for them to locate their data center here in order to continue to improve experience.
Thank you very much. I want to speak as if I am one of those investors now, sitting in the room. I'm like, okay, anytime anybody talk about Africa, talk about Nigeria especially, people remember Boko Haram, people remember something, and they will show you videos of this, what happened in Lagos. So a lot of people see the risk much more than the benefit. If I'm sitting on the other side and I'm looking at, why should I bring my money? So what will you say? Are we going to say that the risk or the benefit outweigh the risk? What are the things that people need to worry about, and how do we explain to people that, you've said it, Dr. Kuka mentioned it. I remember the 4%, I remember the 18%, I remember the 1%, which actually create the prosperity gap. Now, but yes, I'm seeing that there's a lot of opportunities in here, but I'm also worried about changing government. I'm worrying about regulatory frameworks and things like that. How do we encourage people that Africa is actually the next place to bring their money?
All right. So, yes, you're very correct. Investors out there are really worried about the risks of investing in Africa. We have the currency fluctuation to worry about. We have our regulatory inconsistency and instability, to worry about. We even have the lack of infrastructure, because like we all know, data, for instance, requires a lot of power, and we know the state of infrastructure and power in Nigeria. The risks are real, right? But most times, the risks, investors kind of tend to use a blanket approach, on the whole of Africa, and the risks are usually exaggerated, misinterpreted, and without a proper understanding of the risk, they kind of tend to overprice the risk. So risks are real, but the reason why they are there is just to let you focus on how to structure things to ensure that everything goes well. Every risk that can be identified can be mitigated. Most of the risk, currency fluctuation, you can use hedging instruments, to address them. You can take out all sort of insurance against some of the political or regulatory instability. So, and you find out that if you actually structure the investments properly, Africa still presents a more compelling investment case than most of the other places where you don't really have all of these risks because of the demand that is surging. So what we just need to do is to understand the risk and then structure the investments in such a way to, mitigate the risks, and that would be fine.
Thank you very much. I like that approach. And really, if there are no risks, everybody will come, and then the market becomes something else. So it's only for the bold, and then the benefits are there, and they are huge. There are two questions that are related. I'll come to Lars, but I want to ask Wole first. Now, let's talk about regional cross-connect or regional connection. When I say regional, I mean, West African region, without actually going to. I remember some times ago, main one, Equinix, now, they set up what they call a AF-CIX, West African Internet Exchange, right? And the whole idea is to localize the traffic, is to ensure that if somebody from Ghana is going to send traffic to Nigeria, you don't have to go to London to links or go to AF-CIX or D6 and then come to Nigeria, which is how some of the local calls today, how local calls are routed. I'm not talking about packets, I'm not talking about data, I'm talking about telephone call. And that is why it's easier, it's cheaper, and it's even more efficient to call a US than to call Benin Republic. Now, what do you think the role of regional interconnect or regional IXPs will be, in this whole matter? Should we be encouraging that, or should we all be connecting to AF-CIX and D6 and links?
Thank you. Before I jump into that question, I'd like to just tee up something about this risk that she mentioned about the black tax or the African premium, which is 3 to 5% ahead of everything, because of, I would say, the representation of risk. The risk rating agencies are not African. They don't know about our kind of risk. Because it is different, it is just priced differently. There are so many ways to solve. We're not the only ones with fluctuating currency. We're not the only ones who have some issues all over the world. And that's why you see the development banks like the AFDB and Co. are pushing for an African risk rating agency to make sure that we put our own foot forward, because ultimately there's the tech part, then there's the finance part. We're taking money at 3-4x what other people are taking, making the investment case still good. And let's follow the data. In terms of infrastructure loss, Africa is the best. It's 1%, it's 6% in America. They have worse investment. That's what it means basically, is that you're failing compared to us. So the data does not support the risk appetite and all that. And now back to peering. It's about evolution. We're going to get there. It's the same thing with airlines, before. If you want to go to the Caribbean, you fly to 3 different places. If you look at the map, geography, it's just down there. It's 3 hours flight and you should be there. But you first go to Europe to connect because the airports are not there, the airlines are not there. So subsea cable density, first you need the connectivity, then these services will come. So regional peering, for example, AF-CIX is no longer WAFIX. It's in all these data centers. I know that Links is coming into the different data centers. With the rise of AI carrier neutral data centers, investment in Africa, you will see the exchanges come, pair with each other, bring in content, and therefore you stop paying, because it makes commercial sense, you stop paying transit costs. It also gives better user experience because of low latency. Latency is the currency of inference. If you want to give people real-time feedback when they are shopping or also you want to deploy it, you don't need, when the guy has gone home before you tell him he should have bought, so when it was still on your website, he could have clicked. So education about how good this is, because right now in a tech forum, it's taken for granted. I'm not sure I'm telling anybody anything new here. But there are so many people in the ecosystem who don't understand peering, so there's a need for a lot of awareness there, which is why for AfPIF is important. If you look at most of the data centers, they have a whole fabric around an ecosystem that they genuinely build of network providers, content providers, cloud providers, OEMs, to make sure that you solve the issue of latency. Because if somebody is coming to your data center, he's trying to solve for 2-3 things: cost, latency, maybe compliance and all that. So these are the things that I think for us, typically Sub-Saharan Africa, he mentioned it, we don't even have the physical infrastructure first. As we build out better infrastructure, these are a natural consequence of that.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Wole. Lars, how do we, we know about, we're talking about, and Wole mentioned something before I forget, that AF-CIX is now here, right? What lessons now, as Africa, what lessons can we learn from the global, and give it to them? These people have years and years of experience of, maintaining this interconnect. If you go to some of their data center and across, there is a lot of cables. They've been able to manage all that. What lesson should we learn, or can we learn from this global, as we prepare? Because somehow we are going to we are leapfrogging into the future, right? We don't have legacy of coppers and all the other stuff. What lesson should we learn, or can we learn from them? And how do we take this further as we move into, the era of AI and all these boundary, all this huge capacity stuff?
Yeah, let me be very blunt on that, Gbenga. I think take lessons from. I don't think that's entirely the right narrative. I think we should continue to do what we're doing extremely good. I think we have all the information, we have all the big guys been around the block. So it's more for us to continue do what we have been doing for the last years, rather than trying to change something and try to learn something from outside. Because I think all regions, all companies, and all people, we learn in different environments, different settings, and different challenges. So therefore, there's not one silver bullet that can be adopted from one location, be adapted. Let us adapt it here. And I do think actually that among the peers, the ecosystem, all of you in this room, I think we're doing the right thing. What I believe is a challenge though for the market, and sometimes, is that we don't manage a narrative. A narrative is very much about, when do we see this going to happen? What is the expectation? Because coming back to maybe the previous comments about the risk and everything, let me tie it together the risk. Because our sector, our ecosystem, does not really have a demand problem, not at all. Maybe a lot of the denominated US dollar investments in this region for the last years have been a very risky business, probably falling out not that good. But there's no demand problem midterm. There's a business case challenge. okay? There's a business case challenge, and that business case challenge is very related to our business here. It's not that I can take the business case from somewhere else and just adopt it and therefore be good. No, I need to understand my demand here, adapt it to my business case here, and then it will come out good. And that's maybe coming back to your original question. Do I need to take the lessons from another location? Maybe not. I need to adapt those learnings into my reality, and that I think we can sometimes do a bit better, because then also we're going to de-risk and we're going to understand the expectation a bit better. That's probably my short answer to that question.
I like that. Thank you very much, Lars. That's fine. I have two more questions, one for Dr. Coker and one for Dr. Krish. And then I'll take a few questions, from the audience, and then we'll just wrap up, right? Dr. Coker, so talking about IXPs, right? And we just mentioned 57 IXPs. We talk about 48 cities. I was doing my research yesterday, just to check. I'm not sure whether Chad, and there are some countries of Africa that are not really, Lagos, Nigeria has, we have the Internet Exchange Point of Nigeria, IXPN. We have the AF-CIX now, which will be D6. We have, so many other ones. There are some countries of Africa that do not have this connection. Now, some of them, from where I stand, you can say, oh, maybe because they are landlocked, because hardly will you see any coastal country that doesn't have maybe some cable landing or some ways of getting access to the internet. How can we get, IXP, how can we get internet to this underserved, region? And what should investors be looking at when we're looking at, we build data center. Everybody wants to come to Nigeria. They want to go to South Africa. They want to go to Kenya. But nobody wants to go to Chad. Nobody wants to go to Niger. How do we get internet across to these people?
It's a very profound indication of some of the issues we have in Africa. I talk about the sort of backbone. Mm-hmm. If you go back, there's a map on it's one of the resource sites that shows the growth of connectivity across Africa. What's under development, what's not. I suggest people should go and check it out and look at what things were like 10 years ago. That part of Africa was dark, was just dark, no lit up connectivity. Well, the good part of it is that as you go and progress over the 10 years to where we are now, there's a lot around the coast that's very bright, okay, of fiber connectivity, and a bit more light in the dark spine, okay? Unless we get connectivity to those places, it won't kick off the ecosystem in a way. That fiber penetration is the very first key thing. Or connectivity, meaningful broadband is another term that's used, which is going to be in a whole range of different ways. Quite a lot of countries actually get their meaningful broadband through the mobile network operators and the masts and so on. That in itself is a profound innovation. If you look at the MNOs as a point of reference across Africa. Now, until we get that, we will then also get the data centers that then drive the IXs being there, that then gives meaningful, efficient digital infrastructure in those places. And then you start to see it light up. And that's where the DFIs, the development finance institutions, places like the World Bank, they're doing quite a lot of digital initiatives in different countries. But then you also need these skill sets and capabilities of driving the right strategies that will effectively deploy those investments as development investments. And that's when we'll start to see some of those developments. But what we see is that it's not just building core, we have core to edge strategy and a continuum in between. You have to right-size data centers at certain locations. You may make it worthwhile, an investment of say 200, 300, 400 racks capacity, but with the trajectory of being able to expand beyond that for those locations. And so when you have a large location, you can build a huge core we call core data centers 3 megawatts, 10 megawatts to beyond, over 20 megawatts. But the edge data centers could be anything from 20 racks, 50 racks. We have 30 edge data centers in South Africa, for instance. And we've built, a core DC in Kinshasa that'll grow as the demand and capacity grows. So we have to figure out a right way to get capacity, meaningful broadband into those locations and find the right sizing of data centers in those locations that are done in a way that also have meaningful returns for the investment. And it's complicated. My experience in Africa is it's a great opportunity to innovate. And there's a lot of leapfrogging that goes on.
Yeah.
We don't have much time, but there are lots of examples you can give of when we've delivered something like that compared to the West. So let's do what's right for Africa. There's certain things that work in the UK that won't work here. We got what I call the 90-90 challenge. 90% humidity, 90%, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 90% humidity. How do you get 1.2 PUE out of that? It's a huge challenge. Yeah. But you know what? Actually, we do pretty good PUEs, regardless of that, those challenges. Yeah. But we achieve it by doing the right things for Africa, but using reference points internationally. And sometimes we actually do a higher quality here than you might expect than is done elsewhere.
Then, thank you. That's a very good insight. And I remember sometimes early this year was Telehouse, and when I look at what they have built with all the resources, with all the engineering, and I look back at what we have done, I feel that we have actually done very well. I agree with you.
Give you an example. What happened with BA? Right when the data center went belly up, right? One example. I think, that wouldn't happen with some of the key DCs we have here. There was a power failure a few years ago across one axis of the UK, and data centers went down. I said, really? You wouldn't get that here. Yeah. We just do power going off, and it's a process, It's like shelling peas, you just don't go down, you stay up. Yeah. And there are many data centers in those places where if you just switch off the utility power, check out what happens.
No, I know. We are built for resilience, and kudos to African data centers. Thank you very much, Dr. Krish. Before we go to the audience for one or two questions, let's now look at cloud, adoption, and I remember sometimes last year I was at ITW, and there was discussion around single digital markets. In Africa. Something like you have in Europe where, I can order something, I can from here order Uber or order something from Benin Republic and get delivered, where you have liberality of, the single digital market, of course. Discussions then was, okay, so there are so many things that we need to do. We have to look at the regulations, we have to look at currency, we have to look at, so many things. Now, without going to that section right now, let's look at cloud, and let's look at African Free Continental Trade Agreement, right? Is there something that is in there? Can the data centers in Africa, can we leverage this African Free Trade Continental, African Free Trade Continental Agreement, right? I hope I'm right. Can we leverage that in any way to deepen regional trade when it comes to cloud adoption? So what it means is that if I feel that I can host my, can host my servers in Benin Republic, can I host my servers in Benin Republic, for instance? I know the issue of data domiciliation and all that will come in. But how can we leverage, the presence of data center across West Africa, especially, or across Africa, to actually lower cost, for instance, and enable some of this connectivity and traffic migration that we're talking about?
Of course, it is quite possible. When we need to look at couple of areas here. One is, of course, the local regulations, correct? Of course, once we get through that local regulation part, of course, we have various forms. Okay, we have ECOWAS, we have, South African development, we have East African development. We can make it as, the regional wise, then club it back into an African thing. Okay. Correct? So you have to pass through 3 stages, in my opinion. One, of course, you set your own local regulation, correct? If Nigeria says, okay, this is in line with Ghana, then of course, then we can take it forward, make it as an ECOWAS approach towards data domiciliation. If any company across West Africa or ECOWAS can have it, primary maybe in Lagos, secondary can be in somewhere in Dakar, no problem. The same way we can replicate across regions so that we understand it, how this whole principle works, correct? Because we are still testing the waters. We are still moving ahead. We are not yet there, correct? Of course, eventually, what you rightly said, that African Union need to come in place so that we stand as one. And it makes a lot of differences in the traffic because all the traffic remains within Africa, control, security, cost, everything actually, reduces, correct? And again, optimum use of the existing resources within Africa, the data centers. So far, we have around 180 data centers, correct? And it is still growing. Still a lot of terrestrial fiber networks, and subseas, which is not even used up to 20%. Correct? All those usages can go up. And net effect, a point on the investment, the investors get a better return, and even the users get a better experience once we achieve that part. Okay. But of course, it is a progression. For that, the whole industry again need to come together, at least, the local, regional, and the Pan-African industries. We need to come together and make this work.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Anybody? 1, 2? I think we should take maximum of 3 questions. We'll take it very briefly and then we'll round up. Number 1 in red. Number 2. Okay, we have only 1 question. Number 2. Okay, all right, 2 questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. You did a very great session. Okay, I'm Korede. So my question is around internet exchanges and the other things that we're doing to improve the ecosystem, efficiency and all of that. So I have discussions with telcos, right?
Okay, can you move a bit closer to the microphone, sir?
Okay, can you hear me better?
Better now, yes.
Okay. So I have discussions with telcos generally. And then we are doing these improvements, internet exchanges, for example, cut on cost of transit, right? Less money for the telcos, you get. So they're asking questions like, is it net positive at the end of the day? What other benefits are offsetting this loss of revenues that are coming? Of course, growth is good, efficiency is good, but of course the businesses are also in need to make money, right? What's the net positivity at the end of the day that makes it all worth it? I guess that's the question.
Sorry, before you go, let me clarify. You understand what is asking for? Okay, please. You are asking for net positive, whether the...
So with all the losses that are being done away with, which is good, is also...
When you say losses, where?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Transit versus internet exchange.
Okay.
Internet exchange crash the costs.
Yes.
Less money for the telcos.
Yes.
Why should a telco be encouraged to make the system better if it's less money for it?
Okay.
So what's the net positivity at the end of the day that makes it?
Yes. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Very interesting.
A quick one. You need to just work the numbers, okay, and what you get in terms of the benefits of the efficiency of how you optimize number of IXs you have and why, where. We talked about one regional IX. Would it be, well, you need to make it more efficient by having more in different places. So the transit you would also need across all of that is made more efficient. Now, if you're only going to make money out of that, but not out of the efficiencies, then how efficient is it, really? You work the economics to say, okay, the location of the IXs, the number of IXs, the cost of transit in between, is it worth it? What do you get? you have to change business models as well as these things grow. You know, quite a few years ago, we had an issue about data, okay? OTTs, let's stop OTTs coming in and all that kind of stuff and everywhere. And personally, I just had a different view. Change your business model. People need to buy data to use the OTTs, who then sit on the data you provide. And what's happened in those years? It's flipped over. And increasingly more of the revenue is coming out of data than how many times would you pick up your phone and make a proper phone call? You're using some sort of, OTT somewhere, okay? It's the same thing that's happening as you start to build efficient frameworks, digital interconnect frameworks. The business models start to change. And that's what we constantly look at. What is the efficiency of having, say, an IX in Togo, let's say, compared to here, and what's the cost of interconnect, and does it really work, or should we? It's a very good question, but those are the realities of choices that we have to make now. And you start to see a flipping of business models. It's not there's money not to be made. It's just that the old way of making money becomes obsolete.
Yeah.
In fact, there might be more money to be made if you pivot into the right business model. And that's what's happening with that example of mobile telephony against data and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Can I take the opportunity?
You want to add to that? Yes.
Sure. Yeah, I think I have a biggest and deepest respect for what our network operators are doing in Nigeria. I think MTN and Airtel and Glo and everyone else, not mentioned, are doing a fantastic job. And I think their highest desire is probably to reach out to another 50% unserved population. And if that will come through, that means the whole traffic will go. You've broken down probably the digital divide to exist. So I do believe there's no natural reason why they would not do that one, because if they can broaden the base, I think all of us in this room would benefit from in one way or another. So I think there's a natural business case reason for doing that one. And I think they're doing a lot of good for our business in terms of driving traffic for all of us.
Yeah, excellent. And that's why you see, I mean, talking about changing business case, I've seen before now, calls, you have to make regular calls. You make regular calls, you have to wait for roaming and all that. And what people are doing, I mean, smart business, operators or business drivers or business executives will look at it and say, look, we're not going to be in here, and then they're changing. And that's why I don't want to advertise the company. That's why some telcos now are saying we are not a telecom company, we are a digital, lifestyle, So because that you cannot wait in that direction, and whether we like it or not, I mean, you can imagine Uber coming in to disrupt everybody. All you need to do is just key in your car, let it be. So if you are a taxi driver in Agege waiting for, the yellow taxis and all that stuff, now that you know that there is Uber, I mean, the next thing is to just make sure that you key into that and change the business model. So I think naturally, the business model will have to change. And I think that's what everybody is saying here. Second question, please.
Hello? Yes. So my name is Daniel Kofi Anse-Ekufo. So my question is, do you think as a continent we should be intentional and aggressive about the policy frameworks to grow data on our continent? I'll give you 3 specific examples. For example, 1, if a data center is being constructed on the continent as a country, should we say that, hey, you can come in and do it, but make sure you provide green energy to power the data center? 1, that can translate to cost savings for those who are coming to co-locate over there. I mean, if you look at America, you can have a full rack for about $400. Over here, we are looking around $1,600. Another example is, we are always ignoring the web hosting. Should we say, as a continent, all CCTLDs hosting should be inside the country? That's data domiciliation. Should we be intentional and aggressive about policies like that on our continent?
Okay. Wole, you want to? Very briefly.
I'd like to take that, but just before I take that, there was something you asked about the AF-CFTA, how data centers and cloud, how do we
Cloud, yes. Can we leverage it?
Okay.
Yes.
So the first thing is, what's the AF-CFTA? It's an initiative of the AU, etc. So we need to understand it. It's customer. We need to understand what's the customer trying to achieve. It has a technical requirement. High, very low, ultra low latency, less than 5 milliseconds. You know, huge resilience. So there's no African ecosystem now for them to even achieve their own aspirations. That's number one. So secondly, you have 42 currencies, 54 countries. So that's the segue into this question he's asking about. He's speaking like a European. That's the mistake. Africa is not a country. So can we, Africa, say this? Doesn't happen. Because Nigeria is a sovereign state. When you say sovereign, how many sovereign laws are you going to develop around AI, around cloud, around everything you're talking about? It's not possible. It will not make a business case. There's countries in Africa that are not up to VI in terms of even population. And you want to sit with China and negotiate on your own. You'll be left behind. It's also what's happening to people like the Sahel nations there, you know, sparsely populated, difficult to get into. And you want to be hostile. You want to be very firm. It's not going to happen. The ship has left, you know. So what we need to do is a balance. We have to strike a balance. You don't have power. You don't have connectivity. The infrastructure deficit and the institutional voids are so huge that you need help. So you can't now start behaving like, you know, playing the geopolitics of people who are already sitting down. You have to play your hand, the hand you're dealt with.
Yeah.
So there are certain things you cannot be. Why don't you do and instead of or? It shouldn't be either or. What I can encrypt, there's technology, you can put my data anywhere, but I can access it. You may not be able to see it. There's technology for that. We should now be thinking of innovation. How do we protect our data in different ways? Not using the business case of the past to say, if it is not geographically sitting in my continent, then it means that I don't have access or control or all that. That will slow us down, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think one of the issues when we're talking about this digital single currency, I mean digital markets, you know, last year, some of the area that we are in, some of these things around regulations, and a lot of the Francophone countries are still being controlled by France in a way, so it's going to make it difficult. But coming into what he mentioned, for me, I think number one, when you say data center, if you talk about this digital infrastructure, there are no two standards. There is only one standard for data center. And that is why we have the global certifying body like the TIA 942, the uptime and all that. So that when we say this is a data center, everybody all over the world understand what a data center is. So most likely, you will not be able to make your own law. But the other thing is around whether when we are... He mentioned something around power, energy, and sustainability and green. And we don't have time today, but I've always positioned that sustainability for us in Nigeria will be different from what sustainability is in Europe. And, you know, we can talk about that for the whole day. If Holland, Amsterdam, if the Netherlands is talking about, because they have a lot of, wind, this thing, Germany is talking about solar systems and all that. I have gas. Nigeria, we have gas. And the gas is clean. So why can't my own definition of sustainability be the usage of natural gas, And so we need to, my opinion, I think when we're even talking about this sustainability, it should not be something loosely, everybody's sustainability, and then, Netherlands wants me, Nigeria, that have a lot of abundance of gas to comply with what they call, sustainability. The question is this: how many megawatts can we power with solar, Dr. Koka?
It's a very practical thing in terms of solar and the practicality of powering because of the density of the power required. So that's one aspect. How you can practically use wind depends on where you are, and there's other things that drive whether that works, right? Like we say, Africa is 54 countries. Data center in Kinshasa is powered by hydro. Okay, that's the power source we have. In Lagos, if you try and locate into a hydro location, it's not practical, but we have gas. So, but it's not our own definition of saying gas is green. The UK is putting in more gas generation because gas is the greenest you can get before nuclear if you don't go to hydro, and if you don't go to wind, and if you don't go to solar. Your definition is right, okay? But it's not our own Africa thing. Yes. It's a fact. Now, we have gas in many countries in Africa, and if you look across countries in Africa, the power profile differs. Depending on which region you are. If you go to East Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, there's a lot more in geothermal energy. How do you harness that? So it's not one answer fits all. But we have bases in Africa on which to use to generate greener and the greenest possible energy. But also engineer the most efficient facilities you have. The gentleman talked about $600 per rack. I'd like to understand which quality of data center does $600 per rack in the US compared to some, but let's leave that, to another,
All right. I'm not sure if I'll be able to take another question, except I have permission from the organizers that we can extend our time. I would like to, can you make it quick, brief, one sentence? Yes, please.
Very quick. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Forbes. I am an Internet Society Fellow. I will keep it brief instead of a question, just a rebuttal to Mr. Abu's comments. He gave an example of, opportunities for development and direct connectivity between the Caribbean and Africa. I took a 24-hour flight from Trinidad and Tobago to my first time in Africa, and I'd just like to confirm the Caribbean is ready. The Caribbean is ready for those type of opportunities. My question would have been whether you all are aware of any developments around that direction, but it's fine that we could speak after. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I think.
They're dying slowly, these things. The Africa Data Center Association actually has a liaison with the Caribbean Data Center Association in terms of capacity sharing, enablement, and all of those things. So there are some collaborations going on.
Yeah, there are. And I think there's also an event that I think hyperscalers and some other people are planning. I think that's also it's a kind of collaborations, so that we can share data and then look at some of the common challenges and how we can. I want us to round up very quickly. And if we have the president of all African countries sitting down here today, and this panel is supposed to make one recommendation to them as a kind of an action point, what would that your recommendation be in one sentence? You get my question? If this first row is president of Nigeria, Ghana, and everybody is sitting in here, and this panel is to make a recommendation on how we can solve the problem or at least improve what we currently have in terms of, and I want to be general about digital, infrastructure generally and internet penetration. What would be your recommendation for this government?
In one sentence?
Yes, please.
Just one sentence. You put him on the spot here, Gbenga, you know that. I would say never forget that policy and process precedes execution. Then that says everything.
Excellent, yeah. Thank you, Lars.
Get together and unify data sovereignty rules across Africa, not country by country, just like they do in Europe.
Great, thank you.
Ladies first.
Okay. I would say that they'd have to see the digital infrastructure as a national priority in order to make it work.
Excellent, I like that.
I will advise that the fixed power, fixed power, the investors will do the rest. People are already investing in this area. It's already been done by private sector. So, but there's something else. Power is a shared service. It's a huge cost. 50% of our capex, 50%. Take out power, the rest will float itself.
Excellent. Power. And I think there's a lot of, I don't know whether there's a lot of, persons, some companies who are looking at maybe gas, co-generation of gas for power, for data centers, which I think is going to be a very good initiative, especially along the corridors where we have all the data centers, right? So I wish I have money to come and do that kind of stuff, so I'm going to hold everybody together.
For me, if I go in that way, I can say one thing, instead of thinking as 54 countries, 54 brains, think as one if you want to make it happen. Otherwise, it will never happen. That's what it is.
Thank you. And I will say that we need to train the next generation. The rate at which we have infrastructure, we're talking about infrastructure development, digital adoption. We have youth of African countries now looking to go to Europe. We need to train. We need to have a way of structuring our education system with the industry so that we have enough of pool of people that will sustain this infrastructure, and we can also have enough to export, to other African countries. And on that note, I want to say a very big thank you to everybody on this panel. It's been very insightful, and thank you very much for being here today. Thank you.